back on Anderson Street chatting about what it is to be American. This one was a doozy unexpectedly because we had a pretty hard time getting guests for this topic. However, everything works the way it's supposed to. So we've got my mom, my producer's mom, and a homie from remote year who hails from a island nation. Gonna keep that one vague, just to be a little titillating. So, as you may have noticed, we like to get you to respond in the comments to a few questions, a few places of consideration we want you to have. One of which is, what is it to be American, in your opinion? Also, is philanthropy a staple of the United States? Is this what people know of the United States? And thirdly, does hyphenating Asian American, African American, Irish American, etc. further divide? These are the questions at the table, which you'll find out in a few minutes. This is Anderson Street. I'm Victoria, joined at the table by Cathy, Martine, my mom, Mary Pat. Just had to add that in there because we may as well. Don't get crazy. The topic is, what's American? And I was thinking about this for, let's not get crazy and think the past week, probably the past 2 days. And I thought of two things. One, resilience, which to me equates to 9/11. Those of you that are in the room that may know, all the men in my family were first responders on that day. And it was a very intense, memorable, vivid. I was in social studies in 6th grade. I smelled the smoke, and I was picked up by a friend of mine's parents. We didn't know what was going on, but when my dad came home, I knew that it was a wrap. I mean, everybody in my life had to go there to assist in removal, in bringing people home, and it is a very long situation that continues through the threads of my family. And so, to me, American is being able to rebuild and come up from whatever these things may be. I'd like to believe that. And then, secondly, you were on remote year, as I was, and I think of opportunity, right? And without an American passport, maybe I wouldn't have had all the opportunity that I have been able to in my 28 years, that to other people around me, they think I've lived the lives of many, and I've been able to see people sit at tables with a variety of communities, countries, cultures, religions, and discuss things like we're going to discuss today, is my hope. So however this conversation goes, if it's not, values, whatever, but I'm curious, like, Martine, what do you think is American?
The struggle.
Okay.
Yeah, I think American is struggle. I'm the first generation child of immigrants.
Okay. Yeah.
And from
Tell
Haiti.
People.
From the island
Hey.
of Hispaniola,
Yeah.
the Haitian side, the best side.
Not letting anything go. Got it.
No, I don't let anything go. I always rep my people hard. But yeah, no, it's struggle. Like, not necessarily always in a bad thing, but it's not, nothing's given.
The hustle.
It's a hustle, it's a grind, and it's a fight. But you can make your place. You just have to find your tribe, find your support.
Right.
And not give up. Really, that resilience you were talking about, needed. Or this place will grind you down to nothing.
This place, this country, this city.
This country.
Okay. Anyone else?
Well, to me, first of all, an American, I assume that we're talking about the United States rather than just the Americas, because people in South America and, Canadians, Mexicans also consider themselves American.
Yep.
Because they are.
Yes, they are.
Broad
umbrella of a question.
But that's a very different thing.
Yeah.
It's a colloquialism that we call the United States, we're American. Literally, that's, a different thing. But those of us in the United States, which I think is the subject of our conversation, is really based on an idea.
Yeah.
And the idea was revolutionary in terms of other cultures, but based a lot on both Greek and the best of Greek and Roman cultures. And in Greek culture, it was certainly a concept of freedom and democracy.
Yep.
In Roman, it was law, the rule of law. And our Constitution, which frames that basic idea of freedom and democracy, is I find that although life in many ways is a struggle, Martine, not just here, but for everyone at different points of time in their lives, that the opportunities that have been given to us with this very radical idea that was put forth in the Constitution tries to offer us more than probably any other culture has, as well as the opportunity for self-criticism. And the Founding Fathers, in their wisdom, separated us from what we have in common and then our individual pursuits by doing, first of all, separation of church and state, which was
which is ish at
which
the
is
moment.
which was necessary. But there are many different types of religious beliefs, and actually lack of religious belief in the traditional sense can be as fundamentalist as religious. But the basic concept of freedom and democracy has offered us more opportunity, and I am optimistic about the future and for our ability in all realms to be self-critical. We're not perfect, but we're moving ahead, and that needs to be the goal.
Okay.
That was
Progression, freedom, democracy.
right. It's an idea.
It is an idea, yeah. America, to me, I've been thinking about this for a couple of days, and I've realized that it's changed over time. When I was growing up, you knew everybody on the street. Your kids went outside, they played in the DTT, running in the cloud, and they played in the polio water, and it was fine. It was fine. And on Sunday, everybody went to church, and you went to the Italian store to get your bread and see your fruits and vegetables and all this. And I've noticed that it's changed over time. And I think once I thought about it, I think what the change was in my mind was Eton Pates, if you recall.
Oh, I remember it very distinctly.
Okay. And
Kidnapped.
He was kidnapped.
And murdered.
Okay. 1977, and he was 6 years old, and he was a little adorable boy, and he lived in Manhattan, and he wanted to walk to school by himself, which was around the corner, and his mother waited out on the fire escape, watched him to be a big boy. Never made it to school. He was snatched right there. They only found out what happened to him a couple of years ago. And which was he was murdered by the man in the bodega and buried in the basement. Anyway, horrible. This changed America in my thoughts because people now became afraid for themselves, became afraid for their kids, wouldn't let them go outside. We were always outside. There were 5 of us in the house, 5 kids. My mother was like, get out of here.
Get the hell out.
Get the hell out.
Open the door outside.
Our doors were never locked.
Right.
Our
None.
doors were never
That's
locked.
crazy.
I lived in Hoboken, New Jersey. Lived in a row house. There were hundreds of kids on the street. We played stickball and Johnny on the Pony and this and that. It was a easy days,
Right.
easy
LOL.
time.
No, right.
And we went to school at Lady of Grace, and everybody had their uniforms, and
Good old Catholic.
life was good. And then Eton Pates, and it changed everything. And then after that came 9/11, which then changed things more. And yes, Cathy, I do have optimism, and yes, it's a progression, and yes, it's moving forward. Let's just hope it's moving forward in a
Equitable way.
Equitable, okay, and also in a way, yes, that everybody can enjoy. That everybody can enjoy.
Well,
What would that look like, though? Like,
we have this in addressing what you were saying, that there were, in times past, we had common media also. I mean, everyone watched Ed Sullivan. I mean, the entire country watched Ed Sullivan. The entire country had, we had fewer social media outlets.
Yeah.
So there was an agreed upon consensus in some ways about daily living in America and the American concept. And it was more of, a melting pot situation. And we have really, with changing populations in America, really made a determination that it's better to emphasize diversity and be a mixed salad rather than to emphasize what we have in common and be a melting pot. And I think that kind of exemplifies a difference that you're trying to explain about your childhood. And that is a really, really, really interesting debate. And I personally feel that it's very American to separate what is public and what is private. What is public is the federal government. What is private are state and local governments. And our founding fathers really were prescient in understanding that, yes, we are all different, even in the conformity of, different communities. And each community now has its own conformity. But we can do that in private, but in public, it is extremely important to emphasize and find what we have in common, I think, more than emphasizing our differences. And the differences, I'm just pretty strong about it. Our differences are not superficial. Those are dumb differences. Our differences really have more to do with our brains. And as I said to you, Mary Pat, before, our thankfully, in a Darwinian sense, we are all different, and our brains are different. We wouldn't be able to survive if we weren't different. But that's, everyone has strengths and weaknesses. Everyone.
Right.
And we have to try to, I think, as a society, go ahead and try to appreciate people's strengths and try to improve people's weaknesses.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I don't know that I see diversity and the melting pot, they can work together. I think to your point about strengths and weaknesses, you guys, we can work to be complements of each other rather than the same. So it's not about not emphasizing the differences. I think we should celebrate those, but also see the commonalities. It's not either or, it's and.
That's a really good point.
It's and, because I bring a perspective to the table, you bring a perspective to the table. Let's figure out, if we're all type A's, not going to be able to do anything. You need all the different roles and everybody to play those roles in order to build something.
No, I think
and all
that's
those different pieces
important.
should be different to build something constructive that's stronger.
Something that comes directly to mind, which I feel like this might be inflaming.
Oh yeah, throw the grenade. Do it.
I feel a bit strongly about this. The copious hyphenations that we have in this country. Korean American, this American, that American, Haitian American. Do you consider yourself Haitian American?
Yeah, I'm Black or I'm Haitian American. I don't do the African American.
Yeah, but
Fine.
you were.
Fine, thank you, because I feel the same, right? People toss out biracial, this is some separate thing, and I'm just all right, I'm Black and I'm white. If you feel like biracial's fine. Irish American, you're American. Were you born here? Were you born here in this United States? If you're born in this United States, I think that you are American, and this is something that can bring us together, as opposed to divide us. I think that hyphenations work as a division. I do. I tossed it out.
Depends. I say depends because look how many generations and how prevalent is that external culture in your life. I'm first gen. So
Very prevalent in your life.
there's no separation of the American and the Haitian part. Like where one begins, like when my cousins and I hanging out in like the space of 5 minutes would be like, you're so American as an insult and you're so Haitian as an insult. And only
Right.
within that space
that
and within those
is-
people do
that's
we
pretty
understand
funny.
what aspect of
Yeah.
your behavior are you
Right.
commenting on.
Right.
That's like, oh yeah, that American. Like, and you
Yeah.
know, even when sometimes I'll say that even like in mixed, when I say mixed company, people
Right.
who aren't Haitian, so I'll
Yeah.
be like, yeah, well, Americans, blah, 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 blah. And then when I say that, like I'm externalizing myself to it
Right.
because I come with 2, 3 different perspectives really, because there's the Haitian, there's the American, and there's the weird mishmash of
What do you
like,
think has to be hyphenated? Can you say?
I don't know that it has to be hyphenated, but like when I'm traveling, for example, never say I'm American, I say I'm from New York. Because for me, that's like a very specific thing.
Yeah.
Or I say
Yeah,
I'm either Haitian or I'm from New York. Because those are the things that to me like really
That identifies you.
That identify me.
Those are your identifiers.
So versus like American, for me, I'm like, what does that mean?
But in popular American culture right now, it is assumed that you are African American. I mean, you know, how many times do you get that?
I mean,
Every
not
time I
necessarily.
do.
Like, I mean, I'm just like, I'm black. And if you
Yep.
really need to hyphenate me, then put the Haitian in front of it. Okay, like, because, I mean, my people kicked out the colonizers in 1804. So, but we haven't been, you know, it's a very different story than people who are like black Americans who came to this, their ancestors came to this country as slaves. Versus like my ancestors went to the Caribbean and we were the first black country to get rid of the colonizers, right? So it's a very different history.
Right.
And I, as the sort of outsider, can't come in and sort of define that. But I think the reason that some people claim that, and for me, it's just like the African American tries to otherize people who have been part of this country's history, who this country, frankly, was built on their backs, right? It tries to otherize them. But at the same time, I can understand why someone would claim that identity, because when your entire line has been in this country for so long, right? The connections to the continent, when I say the continent, I mean Africa, are broken. There's no clear lines to try to find them.
Right.
Right? And while you're supposed to be in this country and you're supposed to be American, and you're constantly being told, no, you're not worthy, you're not enough, you're not blah, 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 you have to claim something. You have to claim something, right? It's the claiming.
Because we seek identity and
It's
belonging.
everybody seeks identity and belonging,
Yeah.
and when you're constantly being told that you don't belong, you know,
What do you do?
You know, like, I mean, people constantly like, go back to your country, and people are like, where? Which one? Tell me which one am I supposed to go back to, right? So then
Wait a
that's
second.
it's a
People
claim.
say to you, go back to your country?
I mean, they say that to black people in this country. I mean, they'll say it to me because nobody knows I'm Haitian until I open my mouth and say that. But like, that is a thing.
People have said to you,
Yes.
go back to your country.
I mean, yes.
What?
Yes.
For just what? For just walking down the street?
I mean, it's within context, within conversation, but it's something that comes up. And it's something that black Americans
Because
get,
there-
especially when there's
That
a
is something
disagreement.
that
When
comes up.
it's something that comes up a lot, especially when there's disagreement and things like that. Well, if you don't like it here, leave, go back to your country. And then from a black American, for me, okay, yeah, I'm first gen, so like I know which country my people came from. But for someone who's black American, where are they supposed to go
Yeah,
back
but
to?
Right, it's
the thing-
under the assumption that any black people have another country to go to. That is
Yeah, but
true
the
and
thing
accurate.
is that black people in America have a history that goes farther back than my Irish background.
Right.
You know, so they are
But you're much more
arguably
accepted
more
as an American. Yeah.
But and I was thinking about this concept, and I actually wanted to ask you.
What?
Tell us.
I wanted to. Well, I was thinking about. Certainly, you know, many of the black people who came over were sold to, you know, American ship people by black people
By
in
their
Africa
chiefs in
who
Africa.
were
That's true.
catching black people
Yes.
for
That's true.
slaves and selling them. I mean, so, you
That's
know,
true.
it's
Yeah.
not necessarily an ideal situation back in Africa. But But slavery, although yes, America was built on the backs of slaves, we also in America, because of our Constitution and the amendments to the Constitution that we made because of self-criticism, fought against slavery. Not just for America, but for everyone. The Civil War was,
In name.
well, my great-great-grandfather was killed in the Battle of Cold Spring fighting for the Union against slavery. He was
But it was against
Pro-abolition.
not necessarily against slavery. They did not want the Union to be dissolved.
No, they were. Well, that's true.
That was the primary
separation.
Right,
they didn't want separation.
A more perfect union, but it was also against slavery.
Yes, and New York.
Nice comic relief.
But
Go on.
Yeah.
It's not because of. I wouldn't say that the primary reason that the Civil War happened was because of slavery.
It was economic.
It was economical,
which
and
had
it was
to do with
about
slavery
non-dissolution
and
of
how
that.
to do it.
Well, yes, but the economic aspect and impact and the control and wanting to sort of like change that landscape is what it was about. Slavery happened to be a key component of it. So to say that, we realize like, what we're doing is wrong, but nah. Like,
Well,
chain gangs continued on.
you know,
beyond
the reason I say and name is because that happened, and then immediately there were, the thought was and the practice was, how do we get all of these Negroes back in control? How do it kept evolving. It kept evolving until it became Jim Crow. It kept evolving until you have the prison terms right now, right?
Until we had civil rights.
And we're progressing. I'm not saying that it hasn't moved forward, whatever. But it's to say that we had this idealistic and we wanted to do good. Nah.
But we do.
We were pushed at every point. We were pushed to the next step, and every time somebody was pushed to the next step, there was a blowback to how do we,
how do we continue to control?
How do we continue to control? And now there are more African Americans under state control than there was during slavery. That is a fact.
Well, that's the welfare system also.
But it's not. But the welfare system is not even mostly black people. But it's so associated.
That's true. But
it's not. But it's not the welfare system. It's the prison system.
But that's true.
It's from school to prison. It's the lack of opportunity. It's so many different things that play into that. It's not one thing. There's so many different things that plug in and play into that. Mm-hmm. So it's, for me, just every time somebody's like, well, America, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, we have to sort of pull the shade back on the reality of what America is, the good, the bad, the ugly. And I think too many times we talk about the good and the idea and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like,
we're always
and then whatever.
complaining that everything's bad.
Then we're not. It's just we're saying this idea that we're upholding, that we're saying this is what this country was founded on. It has never in the entire history of this country been true for black people.
All right,
it hasn't been true for black people. There's always been a way that it's come back and you can kind of get it.
There are a lot of black people who have done the American dream.
Yes, of course.
Many.
I think there's also classism involved here too.
Oh yeah,
it's not really
but that's what I'm saying. It's a lot.
Primarily
it's
brown
economic.
people
It's
are
brown.
under,
it's this. There's so many different things, and it's kind of like a leaky boat, right?
Right.
You plug a hole. You kind of have to plug all of them because you address this thing and it's still leaking over there and you're still sinking. There's so many different.
Let me
things
pose this question to you. There is a legitimate basis for black people in America, especially African black people who have a history in their family of slavery, to be given affirmative action assistance because of the crimes committed against them.
I struggle with that.
All right, but wait, let me, this is what I'm
thinking. Yep.
But somehow, in recent times, people who are immigrants from other parts of the world who were never subjugated by, American slave culture and policies are somehow piggybacking on the minority routine so that they deserve those special interest advantages. And my question is, I think that American black people with a slave history should be resentful of those limited funds, because politics is division of a finite quantity. So if you have X amount of money to help people have an equal opportunity, I think that the blacks in America have suffered for the dissipation of those funds spread around other people claiming minority rights. So I'm going to ask you. I'm going to
look at it this way, because I'm of that, right? I come from somewhere else, but if I'm walking down the street, how do you tell the difference? So it's, you can come in and there's a very different sort of, there's a whole sort of line of thing we can go into in terms of like how immigrants, black immigrants especially, are in this country and how they come in and all that stuff. But like, once we're here, once we're interacting, we get the same lens, we get the same treatment. So,
but the thing is
that and if we're here, you know, like my mom and her sisters and her family, they all emigrated here. They're all American citizens now. Yeah. So
where are you at?
You know,
where
like
you at?
so it's like, are we then not afforded those rights? So for me, it's
but,
just like
but the rights.
So,
Why are other people who are not subjugated to the history of slavery and being retarded because of that?
History still applies. Once you get here, once you're black, and you know some non-American black people that come here.
Yeah, but we have civil rights. You can sue if you think there's a you can sue if you are discriminated against. You can.
Of course you can.
I mean, we have laws that protect black people.
We have laws that protect black people. Let's be kind of clear about that. Okay, there's a lot of things people can do within laws that are perfectly legal that sort of hold you back. It's been done. It's been done to women. There are laws to protect women. Okay, let's do that.
Oh, okay.
There are laws to protect women.
We made it.
Right? Related, but it's the exact same thing. There are laws to protect women. And we're all women here. I'm sure we've dealt with in our careers and whatever, and things where it's just like, technically I can sue. Technically I can do something about it. There are laws against this. But what's the reality?
But am I going to rattle that boat?
Am I going to rattle that boat? What is the impact of that?
What's going to happen to me
what's
if I
the
rattle
cost?
that?
What's the cost benefit of that? Is it just me?
Stay quiet.
Do I have people who depend on me? Do I have kids that I have to feed? There are so many factors that come into it. But like, yeah, you have laws. You can sue. But it's not that easy.
No, it is not that easy.
But
who has money to sue?
And who has money to sue?
But
there you go.
Thank you, Peanut Gallery.
There you go, Peanut Gallery. I like it.
But outside of the legal system, how can you force anyone to, in private, do something that is right in terms of a moral thing, but that outside of the legal structure, it's very difficult to force people, against their will.
It's really a guideline because people find ways around it.
But
and for affirmative action, frankly, you know who are the biggest benefactors? White women.
Of affirmative action?
Yep.
Go on.
Because it's women,
it's people of color,
it's this, it's etc.
Interesting.
I have never known one white woman in my life.
But it's not nobody's like, oh, you're here because. But like, there's no like, nobody tells you you're here because of affirmative action. And people assume. People assume that. Yeah, go ahead.
What happened was I was in Costa Rica with my husband, who was black. Okay, and
he's the other of this equation.
That's where you got your tan from.
Right.
Didn't pick up on that.
Right. Just in case.
Yeah. My husband's a very bright man, and he has gone to the top of his employment career
field. Professional life.
So we're at a beach. And we're there with other people, from our group and this and that we didn't really know all that well. And I get up to go to the bathroom, whatever I was doing, whatever. I come back, my husband says to me, Mare, listen to what Leslie has to say. I go, okay, go ahead, Les. And she says, well, I was just telling your husband how nice it is that there's affirmative action, that he was able to get to the top of his...
That's really aggravating.
Aggravating?
Really,
I got this call later that night.
Right.
Let me tell you. It came to the point where everybody else on the beach started to stand up because they thought Mare was going to go Jersey on Leslie, because she just assumed.
Yeah.
How
it is
dare
the presumption.
You? And not only that is, I feel affirmative action is insulting. It is telling
have a
the
real
person,
backlash.
It's telling the person, you just can't do it. So we're going to have to move you forward.
I have a question for both of you about that.
Yeah.
What, in your thought, what do you think affirmative action, what does that mean exactly? How do you define it? What do you think that law is?
Okay, it could have changed, or it may have been manipulated somehow. But when I was starting off in my career, and which was in the 70s, what would happen is it was usually with the police, the firemen, and you'd have to take a test, and regardless of what I got, whatever you got was fine, and you went ahead of me.
Do you have the same understanding of it?
There are quotas involved with affirmative action, and it's of good intent.
Nepotism is like real and amazing, and
Oh,
the thing
yes.
that happens
Oh, yeah,
in this
yeah,
country.
yeah, yeah.
No one bats an eye about that. No one
People
has
do.
ish.
And they, it's
mild grumble,
I mean-
not to the degree of affirmative action. So I roomed the roommate I had freshman year, and they put us together because on paper, both Catholics, both played softball in high school, both had similar interests. I get in the room with her. She's like, "You're the first black person I've ever met," and I was like, "I'm sorry.
Oh.
Is that a thing?" Going to PWI gave me the skills and sort of the knowledge, wherewithal, whatever, to navigate the waters that I would have to go through.
The opportunity, again, has a lot to do with the person's temperament. Our real difference is in our brain. Real democracy of education, which is fantastic. But it's motivating because most people find it hard to motivate and discipline themselves to read that book and learn it.
So yes, there are a lot of people who are super driven by adversity and blah, 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 and all that stuff, right? So do we just leave the other ones? And that's why for me, I'm all about the community. How do I bring people up with me? So it's not just I'm getting
Of
to a certain
course.
place or whatever, then it's okay, who's back here?
Of
Where are the other
course.
black women?
That's the
Why are they not
concept
next
of
to me?
noblesse oblige, and it's not for the wealthy, it's for the brain. The smart and more capable have that obligation.
You cannot tie somebody's legs, tie their hands behind their place, and be like, I don't understand why you're not making it. Take the
Are
obstacles
those
away.
ties today? Are
Those
those ties
those
current?
ties are absolute to me today.
So we just wrapped our convo and it was excellent. We hope you liked it. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow YouTube, Patreon, Instagram, Facebook. And yes, you'll see this ending a lot because who doesn't love a little consistency, and we wanted to do it one time, so let's be real.